It's a perfect Saturday morning, and I'm standing in front of my closet, staring at my clothes like I'm prepping for war. And honestly, this feels like a war. My younger sister Julia's baby shower is today, and I already know what I'm walking into. Judgmental smiles, subtle digs, and mom's passive-aggressive commentary. Classic family gathering. The theme? Aaron Blake, Marine veteran, single at 35, no baby, no white picket fence, tragedy in their suburban eyes. I pull out a simple dress, hesitate, then hang it back. My eyes fall on my Marine Corps dress blues, perfectly pressed, gleaming buttons. Mom's text from last night flashes in my mind. Aaron, please don't wear your uniform to the shower. This day is about Julia. Of course it is. Julia, the golden child. Julia, the nurse who married the successful doctor. Julia bought the dream house in Haverford Township. And now Julia, who's 7 months pregnant and about to be celebrated like she's just cured cancer. Meanwhile, I, who served 10 years in the Marines and survived 3 deployments, somehow make everyone uncomfortable by breathing. I pick up the uniform anyway. There's something about slipping into it that steadies me like armor. Screw it. If I endure the pitying glances and the whispered comments about still single, I may as well go as my whole self, medals and all. As I dress, I reflect on how this all became so exhausting. Family gatherings used to be awkward, but they've become interrogation rooms since I was 30. Anyone special in your life, Aaron? You know, it's not too late for kids, dear. Have you thought about freezing your eggs? Yeah, thanks for the reminder, Aunt Barbara. It's not like I hate my family. I love them, mostly. But this day feels like walking into enemy territory where I'm the odd one out simply for not living Julia's version of success. And today will be peak awkward because Mom has practically choreographed this baby shower like a royal wedding. Pinterest-perfect decorations, coordinated outfits, and catering that probably cost more than my last car repair. I grab the keys to my old SUV, not a Suburban Mom mobile, and pause at the door. The gift. Right. I glance over at the neatly wrapped present on the counter, a costly baby carrier, ergonomically designed, recommended by all the blogs I frantically Googled last night in a moment of guilt. Will Julia even appreciate it? Probably not. It's not about the gift, anyway, it's about appearances. Everything always is. As I load the gift into the back seat, I mentally brace myself for the 40-minute drive to Haverford Township, Suburbia Central. The kind of place where every lawn is perfectly manicured, every SUV polished, and every resident suspiciously enthusiastic about block parties. Halfway there, my phone buzzes again, Mom, naturally. Just checking you're on your way, Aaron. Please don't be late. Julia really wants you here. Sure, she does. I let out a breath and kept driving. My fingers tighten on the steering wheel as I rehearse my polite, evasive answers to the inevitable questions. No, there's no one special right now. I'm just focused on myself and my career. Yes, I'm happy. All true. But none of them will satisfy this crowd. Pulling up outside Julia's house feels like stepping onto a movie set. The lawn is pristine, and the white tents are set up with pastel decorations fluttering gently in the breeze. A sign on the front lawn reads, "Welcome Baby Blake," surrounded by carefully arranged flowers. It's all so perfect, it makes me want to roll my eyes and maybe throw up a little. I kill the engine, take a deep breath, and step out. Heads turn immediately as I cross the lawn in full Marine Corps dress blues. Mom's clutching baby's paws mid-conversation. A couple of women I vaguely recognize from Julia's wedding whisper something to each other behind their sunglasses. I catch sight of Mom near the entrance. Her eyes widen when she sees me in uniform, then narrow in a familiar mix of disapproval and, "I told you so." She's naturally wearing pearls and pastel pink, coordinating perfectly with the decor. Aaron. She greets me in that tone that says she's thrilled I came but mortified by my outfit choice. You look official. Official. That's a new one. Before she can launch into a passive-aggressive comment about my statement, Julia appears in the doorway, glowing literally. Her hair was perfectly curled, her dress was flowing and ethereal, and her hands rested on her baby bump like she was starring in a maternity catalog. "Aaron, you made it," she says, her voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I wasn't sure you'd show, but here you are always making an entrance." A few guests chuckle, and I plaster on a tight smile. "It's good to see you, Julia," I reply, handing the gift. Her eyes flicker down to it briefly before she turns back to the crowd. "Let's get started. We don't want to keep anyone waiting," she announces brightly. Of course not. Heaven forbid anyone wait for me. Before we go further, if you've ever had a family gathering that made you want to crawl under the table, drop a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. I followed Julia inside, feeling like an outsider, even though I'm her sister. The decorations inside are even more over the top. Coordinated napkins, a mimosa bar, and baby-themed trivia cards on every table. I catch snippets of conversation as I move through the crowd. Plans for nursery designs, comparisons of strollers, debates about organic baby food. I stand near the mimosa bar, awkwardly holding a glass of orange juice, because drinking before noon is frowned upon when you're the single older sister in uniform. Julia's friends cluster nearby, laughing about something I don't catch. One of them glances my way and lowers her voice. Classic move. I glance toward Mom, chatting animatedly with one of Julia's mother-in-law's friends, proudly recounting Julia's accomplishments at the hospital. It's like I don't exist. But I stay standing, with glass in hand, uniform crisp, smiling politely, ready for whatever comes next. I shift my glass to my other hand, the condensation slick against my fingers as I force my smile to stay in place. My feet ache in the polished shoes I never wear anymore, but I don't move from my spot near the mimosa bar. A server passes with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. I politely shake my head but catch his raised eyebrow, like he's wondering why I'm here. Frankly, so am I. I glance around the room, and it's like I'm a ghost at my sister's party. Everyone fits perfectly into this scene. Suburban moms in their floral dresses and perfect hair, all radiant with a shared understanding of belonging here. And then there's me. Pressed uniform, medals gleaming, a reminder that I'm not part of this Pinterest perfect tableau. But here's the thing, this isn't new. I've always been the one who didn't fit, long before I enlisted. I remember being 8 years old, standing in the backyard with a scraped knee while Julia pranced around in a princess costume, holding court over every other kid at the birthday party. Back then, she was already the favorite, charming, delicate, easy for adults to adore. I was the kid who climbed trees, skinned my knees, and refused to stay clean. Even in high school, Julia was the one who dated the football captain and got nominated for homecoming queen, while I preferred ROTC drills and spent weekends at shooting ranges. The gap only grew after graduation. Julia went straight into nursing school and started dating her now husband, David, a perfectly respectable surgeon from a perfectly respectable family, while I shipped out to boot camp and Iraq. Mom's pride in Julia was always so effortless. She never needed to say it outright. The way her eyes lit up at Julia's announcements, engagement, wedding, pregnancy, it was all clear enough. And when she spoke of me, she mentioned my travels and unconventional choices with a tight smile, like she couldn't quite translate my accomplishments into something that made sense to her friends. These memories sit heavy as I take another sip of orange juice and glance down at my dress blues, the medals that speak of real grit and sacrifice ignored here like accessories out of place. A group near the front of the room laughs too loudly, and I spot Aunt Denise throwing me a glance. No doubt the conversation involves me. It always does when I'm around, an awkward reminder that single is a condition requiring diagnosis in this crowd. Julia's voice carries from across the room as she smiles at her friends, basking in the glow of admiration. She's in her element, effortlessly charming, effortlessly adored. And then, almost casually, she catches my eye. Her smile widens, polite on the surface, but loaded with that familiar undertone. She doesn't need to say anything. The message is clear, she's winning, and I'm simply here as a prop in her perfect narrative. I straighten my shoulders, feeling the weight of my uniform, but not in a burdensome way. It's like armor. Every time I'm tempted to shrink under their judgment, this uniform reminds me who I am outside these walls. I didn't wear it today to provoke. I wore it because this is part of me that they'll never fully understand or accept. And I'm tired of making myself smaller to fit their expectations. So I stand tall, determined not to hide. A woman I don't recognize approaches with a practiced smile. You must be Julia's sister, Erin, right? The Marine. That's all I am here, Julia's sister. The Marine. She says it's a novelty, like I should feel flattered to have a label attached. Yes. I say simply, shaking her hand. She leans in slightly. You look so serious in that uniform. Aren't you hot and all that? I manage a polite smile, refusing to give her the satisfaction of discomfort. It's not so bad. I've worn it in 120-degree desert heat. Her smile falters, and she quickly excuses herself. Another one down. Moments later, Mom reappears at my side, adjusting a napkin on the table like she's too busy to look me directly. I wish you'd chosen something lighter, dear. It's such a warm day. I hold her gaze this time. This is who I am, Mom. She doesn't respond. She just gives me a tight smile before turning to greet more guests. No approval, no pride, just that awkward pause before moving on. I exhale slowly and reposition myself near a table with fewer people, scanning the room and noticing how effortlessly Julia floats from group to group, basking in compliments. She thrives here, in this environment of carefully curated perfection. Meanwhile, I'm reminded there's another path of sacrifice, discipline, and social awkwardness. But I won't shrink. Standing there, I feel oddly calm despite the awkwardness pressing in from every side. My decision to wear this uniform wasn't about making a statement for them, but about staying true to myself. And as much as I feel like a fish out of water, I refuse to pretend I'm something I'm not. I turn toward the patio doors, where sunlight spills into the room, and adjust my posture. I won't hide in the corner. I won't slip away early. I'll be fully present, even if they don't know what to make of me. The noise of the party seems distant for a moment as I watch Julia laughing with her friends, her hand resting gently on her stomach. She's the star today, and that's fine. I square my shoulders again, deciding quietly. They can laugh and whisper, but I'm not leaving. Not yet. My fingers trace the edge of the mimosa glass as I glance around, calculating how long I'll need to stay to appear polite without subjecting myself to too much of this spectacle. The constant drone of polite conversation swirls around me, punctuated by little bursts of laughter that always seem to follow a glance in my direction. Julia's friends hover near the gift table, eyeing me while pretending to discuss swaddle blankets or organic diaper creams. Their perfectly polished nails clutch their champagne flutes just so, their expressions politely curious and faintly condescending. I can practically hear their unspoken questions. Why is Erin still single? What's with the uniform? What's wrong with her? Julia catches my gaze again, her smile wide and almost sweet except for the glint of triumph in her eyes. She knows exactly what this is. For her, today isn't just about celebrating her pending motherhood, it's about demonstrating her superiority in front of every friend, cousin, and acquaintance assembled here. Aunt Denise drifts over with a plate of finger sandwiches and a slightly too bright smile. So, Erin, she begins, her tone dripping with faux warmth. How long are you planning to stay in the military? I imagine it's hard to meet someone with all that moving around. I keep my smile tight. I'm out now. Been back for over a year. Her eyebrows lift in surprise, and she seems genuinely confused momentarily. Oh, well. I'm sure it's only a matter of time before you meet a nice man and settle down. You're still young enough, after all. The still hits harder than she probably intended, and I sip my drink to avoid answering. A chorus of laughter erupts from across the room, where Julia has gathered a small circle of her closest friends. She glances my way, raises her voice just enough to carry over the hum of conversation, and says with a light, lilting laugh, "Guess who's still single?" Even after all these years. The air in the room seems to pause for a beat. A few of her friends cover their smiles with their hands, some glance my way with a mix of awkwardness and sympathy. My cheeks burn, but I refuse to drop my gaze. My fingers tightened around the stem of my glass, and the condensation left small, damp circles on the tablecloth. Mom, standing nearby, adds without missing a beat. Julia certainly made good choices. She found herself a wonderful husband, settled down, and now will soon have our first grandchild. Her smile is soft, proud, directed entirely at Julia, as if I'm invisible. And maybe I am, except when they need me to play the role of the other sister, the one who didn't get it right. A ripple of small talk continues as if Julia's jab were a completely harmless, funny remark. I can feel the weight of their glances, the whispers disguised as polite conversation. All of it is designed to remind me that I'm out of place here. I hold my head high, still silent, but inside I'm seething. I want to say something sharp that would wipe the smug look off Julia's face, but I know that would only feed their narrative. Aaron. Too intense, too defensive, too much. Instead, I breathe slowly, feeling my uniform tighten as I straighten my posture. Let them think whatever they want. I didn't come here to win their approval. Nothing I said would change their minds anyway. Julia has moved on effortlessly, gathering more praise as she opens a gift from one of her friends. This tiny designer onesie draws exaggerated gasps of delight from the assembled crowd. The performance continues, as choreographed as a ballet. As I drift closer to the gift table, still determined not to bolt from the room, I catch little snippets of conversation around me. Such a shame Aaron hasn't settled down yet. One woman murmurs to another. Maybe she's too independent for her own good, comes the reply, whispered but not quiet enough to escape my ears. They don't realize I can hear them, or maybe they don't care. The polite isolation feels almost more stifling than outright confrontation. I glance toward the French doors leading out to the garden, tempted for just a second to slip outside for air. But I stay where I am, determined not to give Julia the satisfaction of seeing me retreat. My eyes scan the room again, landing briefly on a cluster of older relatives gathered around Mom, who is, as usual, recounting Julia's accomplishments in loving detail. Her nursing career, her lovely home, her attentive husband, and now her soon-to-arrive child. Not one word about me. Nothing about my years of service, my deployments, my commendations, just silence. I'm here, standing in full uniform, and it's like I don't even exist unless they need me as a punchline. Still, I keep my chin lifted and stay put, refusing to be reduced to a passing comment or a source of pity. Suppose they want to see me as the other sister, fine. But I'm not going to let them define me on their terms. I adjust the cuffs on my uniform jacket, the metals catching the light just enough to draw a few curious stares. Let them look. Let them wonder. I didn't come here to follow Julia's carefully curated script. The laughter from across the room swells again, followed by applause as Julia delicately lifts a tiny baby blanket from a gift bag, holding it aloft like she's just won an award. The performance continues as if my presence is just background decoration, a reminder of everything I'm not. I let my lips curl into a faint, knowing smile. They can laugh all they want. I'm still standing, exactly as I am, and I'm not going anywhere. I shift my weight and pretend to admire the centerpiece on the nearest table, but my ears stay tuned to every word floating around the room. A particular kind of silence falls when you know you're the subject of conversation, even if no one speaks to you directly. The tension clings to me like humidity, heavy and cloying. A voice cuts through it, bright and confident. Julia's, Nuria's Sony. Everyone always said Aaron would be the first to settle down, she says with a light laugh, eyes sweeping over her audience before casually flicking toward me. But here I am, married, pregnant, and she's still, well, single as ever. The room doesn't erupt in laughter, but there's this ripple-like polite encouragement of a slightly edgy joke. I feel every eye on me, some filled with amusement, others with quiet pity. The ones who pity me are worse. Then Mom jumps in, her tone all fake affection, smoothing over the tension while sharpening the insult. Well, not everyone takes the traditional path. But Julia has done everything right. Wonderful husband, beautiful home. I stand frozen, my spine straight, holding my glass firmly so it won't tremble. The humiliation is sharp and cold, cutting deeper than I want to admit. Julia's voice pipes up again from across the room, cheerful. At least I'm making sure mom and dad get a grandchild while they're still young enough to enjoy it, right? The crowd chuckles again, as if this whole thing is so funny and lighthearted. As if my life is a harmless punchline. I manage a tight smile and take another slow sip of orange juice. It's somehow both too sweet and too bitter at once. The truth is, I've endured worse. I've faced drill sergeants screaming in my face. I've slept in the dirt for weeks. I've felt fear far greater than the disapproval of a suburban brunch crowd. But none of that prepared me for the way your own family can cut you down while smiling, the way they weaponize politeness. I finally set my glass down, no longer trusting myself not to crush it between my fingers. The air feels heavier, thicker, almost suffocating. Across the room, Julia accepts a compliment from a friend about how radiant she looks and how pregnancy suits her. She basks in it like it's her natural state. I step back slightly, scanning for an exit. The garden doors beckon open just enough for me to slip out without too much notice. My fingers brush the side of my uniform, straightening it automatically as I move. The cool air hits me as soon as I step outside. It's a relief, a sharp contrast to the stifling atmosphere inside. The perfectly landscaped garden is eerily quiet compared to the babble of voices I just left behind. I walk to a bench tucked beneath a small tree, sit down, and finally allow myself a breath. My chest feels tight, and my jaw clenches so hard it aches. I'm angry not just at Julia, but at myself for even thinking I could come here and blend in. I knew better. I've always known better. It wasn't just today. It was years of this dynamic, and being the other sister who didn't check all the right boxes. Military career? Impressive, sure, but not relatable. Independent and unmarried? Tragic. No children? A cautionary tale. It swirls around me, sharpened by Julia's smug tone and Mom's subtle jabs. I close my eyes for a second and focus on the sound of the wind rustling through the leaves, grounding myself the way I learned when things got overwhelming in the field. A few deep breaths, eyes on a single fixed point, small rituals to regain control. The sound of laughter floats through the open doors behind me, muffled now by distance but still too loud in my mind. I lean forward, elbows on my knees, and rub my hands together, trying to shake the tension out of my body. It's not just that they see me as single, it's that they see me as incomplete, unfinished. Like my life is a draft waiting for edits that Julia has already perfected. And somehow, standing in a war zone felt less hostile than sitting through their casual cruelty disguised as banter. I take another breath, slower this time, and straighten up again. No tears. Not here, not now. They don't get that satisfaction. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of flowers from the garden's edge, a brief moment of calm in the middle of this quiet storm. I adjust the creases of my uniform jacket one more time and keep my eyes steady, refusing to let the weight of their judgment bend me. I'm not going back inside to hide in the corner or disappear into the crowd. I'm not giving Julia, Mom, or anyone else the power to decide my worth. The laughter inside rises again, the sound punctuated by Julia's bright, perfect, infuriating voice. But I sit perfectly still, spine straight, breathing steadily. Suppose this is the game they want to play, fine. I know who I am, even if they refuse to see it. I let my fingers trace the polished edge of the bench beneath me, grounding myself in something solid while the noise of Julia's perfectly choreographed party buzzes somewhere behind the garden doors. The air out here is cooler, almost sharp, and I welcome it. At least nature doesn't care if you're married or single. A breeze stirs a strand of hair across my face, and I brush it back with a hand trembling more than I want to admit. My throat feels tight, that familiar pressure building behind my eyes. I swipe at my cheek quickly, anger more than sadness, but I know what it must look like to anyone watching, the older sister sitting outside alone, who just can't handle it. Whatever. Let them think what they want. I glance down at the grass, focusing on its carefully manicured perfection, each blade trimmed as neatly as Julia's life appears to be. My breathing steadies, but my mind is racing with every slight, every patronizing smile and pitying glance I've endured today and every day like it. That's when I hear small footsteps crunching on the path behind me. I lift my head, expecting some hovering relative to be sent out to check on me, ready with an awkward smile and a condescending expression. "Are you okay, dear?" But instead, it's a child. A boy, maybe 7 or 8, with a mop of dark hair and big, curious eyes. He pauses a few feet away, studying me without hesitation. "Are you sad?" he asks bluntly. His voice is so direct, so genuine, that I can't help but let out a breath of almost laughter. "Maybe a little," I admit. "What makes you think that?" "You look like my dad when he's sad," he says matter-of-factly. He sits like that too. I offer him a small smile, genuinely touched by his straightforward honesty. "What's your name?" I ask. "Max," he says proudly, sticking out a hand like a tiny adult. I shake it, a real handshake, not the limp sort adults usually give kids. "Well, Max, it's nice to meet you." He nods, satisfied. I'm supposed to be inside, but it's boring in there. Yeah, I say, allowing myself a more genuine smile. "I get that." Before we can say anything else, I hear a deeper voice call from behind the hedge. "Max, where did you go?" The voice owner appears a second later, a tall man in uniform, his dress blues as polished and sharp as mine. He carries himself with an ease I recognize immediately, military confidence, understated but undeniable. When he sees Max with me, he relaxes slightly. "There you are," he says to the boy. "You can't just wander off." "I wasn't wandering," Max protests seriously. "I was talking to her. She's sad." The man's gaze lifts to meet mine, and for the first time today, I see genuine concern in someone's expression, concern not laced with judgment or curiosity, just simple empathy. "Sorry if he bothered you," the man says, stepping forward and offering his hand. "Grant Coleman." I take his hand automatically. His grip is firm but not overbearing. "Aaron Blake." "Okay." Recognition flickers in his eyes at my name, but he doesn't say anything immediately. Instead, he gives me a small, almost wry smile. "Julia's sister, right?" "Unfortunately," I say before I can stop myself. It slips out, raw and unfiltered, but he chuckles instead of the awkward silence. I expect a low, warm sound that feels unexpectedly reassuring. "Yeah, I figured," he says, his tone light but kind. "She mentioned you." I raise an eyebrow. "All good things, I'm sure." His smile widens just slightly, but he doesn't take the bait. "Max, let's give Aaron some space," he says gently, touching his son's shoulder. Max shakes his head firmly. "She doesn't mind, she's nice." I laugh despite myself. "It's fine, really." Grant hesitates briefly, then says, "If you don't mind a little company, we can stay. We're late to this whole thing anyway." He gestures back toward the party. Not exactly our usual scene. That simple admission catches me off guard. Here's a man who doesn't feel he fits here either. His presence isn't polished or performative. It's steady, real. Max plops himself down on the grass at my feet, utterly unconcerned with the perfect landscaping, and starts picking at a dandelion. Grant sits on the bench next to me but keeps a respectful distance. "I didn't expect to meet another Marine here," he says after a moment, his tone conversational but genuine. I glance over, a little surprised. "You're active?" "Retired now," he says. "Brigadier General. Just moved back to Philly a few months ago." "Of course. A general. Please leave it to Julia to have a general on her guest list." But there's no pretension in his voice, no swagger. "Julia invited you?" I ask. He nods. "We worked together when she did a rotation as a Navy nurse at one of our bases overseas." That catches my attention, sharp and immediate, but I keep my face neutral. "Small world," I say carefully. Max holds up the dandelion proudly. "I found this for you," he declares. I take it with a genuine smile, touched despite myself. "Thank you, Max, I needed that." Grant meets my gaze again, steady and kind. "Looks like Max made a new friend." "Looks like." I agree quietly, feeling some of the tightness in my chest begin to ease, not because anything has been fixed, but because I don't feel entirely alone for the first time today. I hand the dandelion back to Max, amused at how serious he looks about the whole thing, and push myself off the bench. My body feels lighter, but only slightly. The tension still lingers under my skin. Grant stands too, brushing imaginary lint from his dress blues, though his uniform, like mine, is spotless. The murmur of conversation drifts from the house, and Grant tilts his head slightly, listening. Well, he says casually, I guess we should actually show our faces. Oh. I nod without answering, falling in step beside him as we approach the open doors. Max trails after us, occasionally skipping ahead, then circling back. As we cross the threshold, I feel the atmosphere shift immediately. It's almost as if the air inside is thicker, heavier, weighted down by judgment and surface-level politeness. Heads turn. Standing near the cake table with a group of women, Julia freezes for a split second before recovering, flashing her practiced smile. But I catch the flicker in her eyes, a flash of calculation followed by something that looks suspiciously like irritation. She did not expect Grant to arrive. Or maybe she didn't expect him to walk in with me. The conversations in the room drop in volume, curiosity rippling through the crowd as people take in the sight of Grant in full uniform, perfectly composed, exuding quiet authority, with Max at his side and me walking next to him. We might as well have marched in formation. Julia steps forward quickly, her smile a little too bright. Grant, you made it. We were wondering if you'd be able to come. Her tone is smooth and perfectly polished, but an edge beneath it is a crack in the veneer that only someone paying attention would catch. Grant doesn't return her smile immediately. Instead, he glances at me, then down at Max, who is gripping my hand without hesitation. Julia's eyes flick briefly to our joined hands before snapping back to Grant's face. She recovers fast. It's so good to see you. And Max, of course. Her gaze flickers to me, then back to Grant. I didn't realize you two knew each other. Grant's reply is calm, even, but carries weight. Max met Aaron outside. They hit it off. And then he says it loud enough for the entire room to hear. I'm here for Aaron. A silence descends over the space, not absolute, but palpable, like a collective intake of breath. Julia's expression freezes. The crowd seems momentarily unsure of how to react, caught between polite curiosity and the uncomfortable realization that something shifted dramatically. Standing near the drinks table, Mom stiffens, her smile faltering as she processes what she's just heard. I don't say anything. I don't need to. Grant's words hang in the air like a challenge and a shield all at once. He turns slightly toward me, his posture open and relaxed, as if daring anyone to question his presence or statement. Oblivious to the tension he's in the middle of, Max tugs on my sleeve and announces loudly, Daddy says you're nice. A few of Julia's friends laugh softly, but it's not the same laughter as before. It's not the smug, complicit kind. This is amusement with a different undertone, interest, maybe even admiration. Julia's carefully managed facade cracks just enough for me to see the flicker of irritation underneath. Her jaw tightens briefly before she pastes her smile back into place. Well, she says, voice too loud, you're both just in time for cake. Her words are an attempt to regain control of the room, to reassert the narrative she thought she was writing today. But the atmosphere has shifted, and everyone feels it. Grant leans down toward Max. Let's grab a seat, buddy. Max nods enthusiastically, dragging me toward an empty table near the front. Grant follows easily, ignoring Julia's attempt to guide him toward a spot next to her. As we sit, I feel something inside me loosen, not wholly, but enough to breathe again, without feeling like I'm on the verge of collapse. The subtle power dynamics of the room have changed, and Julia knows it. Across the table, I catch Mom watching us, her expression unreadable but undeniably unsettled. The woman who spent the entire day proud of Julia's perfect life is now faced with a scene she didn't script, her eldest daughter sitting confidently next to a decorated general and his charming son, receiving the attention Julia assumed would all be hers. Grant meets my gaze across the table, a slight, almost imperceptible nod acknowledging our quiet solidarity. Blissfully unaware of the complex social chess match around him, Max chatters about butterflies and why he likes the frosting on chocolate cake better than vanilla. Julia cuts the cake with a smile that's now just a fraction too tight, the cameras clicking dutifully as she poses. But even she can't reclaim all of the spotlight, not entirely. I sit quietly, steady and unshaken, letting the chatter wash around me. For the first time today, I don't feel like an outsider. I set my fork down carefully, wiping a bit of frosting from my finger as Max leans into my side, happily licking his cake-covered spoon. Across the table, Grant chats casually with one of Julia's neighbors, his demeanor so natural and unbothered that it almost feels surreal considering the tension swirling around us just minutes ago. But even with this odd calmness blanketing the room, my mind doesn't stop spinning. I can feel Julia's gaze from across the tableau-pointed stare that she quickly masks with polite smiles whenever someone else looks her way. The woman knows she lost a round today, but isn't finished. I know that look. It's the same one she gave me when she was 15, and I beat her in a swim race she thought she had locked in. She smiled then, too, but her eyes promised revenge. Max finishes his cake with the kind of determination I can't help but admire, then announces loudly, "I'm done," before promptly sliding off his chair and darting toward the garden again. Grant rises automatically. "I'll keep an eye on him," he says to no one in particular, then turns to me with a surprisingly warm smile. "Care for a little fresh air?" I hesitate only briefly before standing. Anything to escape the polite, icy atmosphere hovering over this table. The late afternoon sun stretches long shadows across the perfectly maintained lawn as we return to the garden. "I hope I didn't cause too much trouble in there," Grant says after a moment, his voice low and conversational. I glance sideways at him. "Not at all. I think Julia was thrilled to see you." He chuckles, shaking his head. "That's generous of you." We pad for a few steps, and the crunch of gravel underfoot is the only sound. Then Grant glances at me, the ease in his face giving way to something more thoughtful. "You and Julia seem close." The dry laugh that escapes me is automatic. "If by close you mean related by blood, but polar opposites in every possible way, sure." Grant smiles gently. "I can see that." There's a pause where neither of us feels compelled to fill the silence. Unlike every strained conversation inside that house, it's strange how natural that feels. Finally, I ask, "So how do you know Julia?" "Really?" His expression doesn't change much, but there's a subtle shift in awareness that I'm not asking a polite question but a real one. "We worked together," he says simply. "She did a rotation as a Navy nurse at one of the bases I commanded overseas." That surprises me more than I expect. Julia never mentioned military service to anyone, at least not that I can recall. And it certainly doesn't fit her carefully curated narrative of suburban perfection. "Really?" I ask, my tone casual but my mind racing. "That's news to me." Grant's smile is almost sheepish. "It was brief. Just a few months. She was popular there. A lot of the guys appreciated having a compassionate nurse around." I filed that away carefully. "Sounds like Julia." He glances at me sideways, almost like he's weighing whether to say more, but then simply adds, "You probably don't need me to tell you, but your sister knows how to make an impression." That's an understatement if I've ever heard one. I stop near a flower bed, crouching to pluck a stray weed between the plants. My hands need something to do, even if it's just tidying a garden that isn't mine. "She's always been the star of the show," I say quietly. "I've spent most of my life in her shadow, actually." Grant leans against the fence nearby, arms crossed casually, but his gaze is focused entirely on me. "You don't seem like the shadow type." That catches me off guard, a genuine compliment, delivered so simply I almost miss it. "Thanks," I say, my voice softer than I intended. He doesn't push further, just stands there in easy silence, giving me space to breathe. I glance back toward the house. Through the open doors, I can see Julia laughing too brightly at something one of her friends just said, but her eyes are darting toward us, specifically Grant. Something about how she looks at him that nags at me, a familiarity that feels too practiced and uncomfortable. The way her voice softened earlier when she greeted him. the way her smile faltered when she saw us walk in together. I turn back to Grant. You said she was popular on base. I say lightly, but there's a question beneath the words. He hesitates for the briefest moment before answering. Yeah, a lot of guys liked her. But the way he says it careful, measured tells me there's more to that story. My instincts, honed over years of reading people quickly and accurately, are already on high alert. Max's voice carries from across the garden, interrupting my thought. He's crouched near a bush, examining something intently. Dad, come see this butterfly, he calls excitedly. Grant pushes off the fence, his face softening immediately at his son's voice. Duty calls, he says with a slight grin. I nod, watching as he walks over to his son, crouching beside him effortlessly, blending into the moment with an ease that makes it hard to reconcile him as a brigadier general. I stand quietly by the flower bed, eyes fixed on them, but my mind is working fast. Julia's connection to Grant isn't just casual. It never is with her. That flicker in her eyes when he walked in the calculation told me everything I needed to know. I straighten up slowly, brushing dirt from my fingers. Whatever history they have, it's worth paying attention to. And today isn't over yet. I brush my palms against my dress blues, straightening my jacket again even though there's no real need. Old habits die hard. Always present yourself squared away, even if your mind is racing. I drift back toward the garden doors, catching a glimpse of Julia through the window as she smiles too perfectly at a guest. Her laugh is a little too bright, her movements too rehearsed. She's unsettled. I can see it now. Inside, the crowd has thinned slightly, a few guests slipping away early, politely tired or eager to return to their perfectly curated lives. Julia ensures she's front and center at all times, charming every remaining guest, but her eyes flick toward me occasionally, quick, sharp glances she tries to disguise. She's watching me just as I'm watching her. I grab a glass of water from the buffet table, needing something to hold onto while my mind works. Grant's comments replay in my head, Julia's rotation as a Navy nurse. Popular on base, that isn't nothing. And it certainly isn't part of the glossy family narrative I've been fed for years. I pull out my phone discreetly, angling the screen so no one notices what I'm doing. A quick search, fingers tapping fast and quiet. Julia Blake, Navy nurse rotation. I scroll through a few old articles and social media posts. There is nothing much at first, but a photo catches my eye. It's not some formal Navy ceremony shot. It's casual and candid and was taken at some barbecue on base. The background's familiar enough: folding tables, people in various uniform states. Julia's front and center, of course, her arm draped around a Marine I recognize immediately. Grant. But it's not just that they're in a photo together, it's how they look at each other. There's a closeness, casual but intimate, a comfort that people don't manufacture easily. I zoom in slightly and feel a sharp twist in my gut. Julia never mentioned this friendship or whatever it was. Not once. And now she's standing in her backyard, pretending that Grant's appearance today is some polite obligation, nothing more. The calculation behind her bright smile today suddenly makes perfect sense. She didn't expect Grant to align himself with me. She thought he was still hers to manage, part of the web she spins around everyone in this family. I lock my phone screen quickly, slipping it back into my pocket before anyone notices. Mom's voice cuts across the yard, loud and pleased. Julia planned this whole day herself, you know. Even while working full-time at the hospital, she really can do it all. Her words aren't meant for me, but they're loud enough that I'm meant to hear them anyway, a subtle reminder that Julia remains the benchmark by which everything is measured. I sip the water slowly, my mind far from the chatter around me. The timeline doesn't add up. Julia was supposedly engaged to David while overseas doing that Navy nurse rotation. I remember the engagement announcement clear as day. Mom practically wallpapered the house with it. And yet, here's this photograph. Grant's easy acknowledgement. Julia's reaction when he arrived today. My stomach tightens, and it isn't from nerves, from the undeniable pieces of a puzzle sitting just beneath the surface. Julia's perfect narrative has cracks. Real ones. I see Grant walking back toward the house, Max skipping at his side, proudly pointing out a butterfly sticker he's found somewhere in the garden. Grant looks completely at ease, his attention entirely on his son, unaware of the ripple effect his arrival has caused. Across the patio, Julia's gaze snaps to him instantly. Her smile turns slightly brittle when she notices him looking relaxed and, worse, engaged with me. I move casually through the crowd again, positioning myself close enough to hear Julia's conversation as she flits from guest to guest. Her voice is light, breezy, but there's an undercurrent of tension she can't quite hide anymore. One of her friends leans in, her voice carrying just enough that I catch the words. "So, that general seems nice. Did you two ever?" Julia laughs quickly, too quickly. "Oh no. We just worked together for a while. Strictly professional. We hardly even talked outside of work." I almost snort at that, remembering the photograph burning a hole in my phone. Julia's denial is fast, defensive, and much too polished, precisely the kind of response she gives when she's not just spinning a narrative but actively covering something up. I'm no stranger to this dance. I've watched her do it since we were kids. She lies so easily and smoothly that people don't even think to question it. But this time, I'm questioning it. And I have reason. I glance back at Grant and Max, watching them re-enter the house. Max tugs Grant toward the dessert table like he's lived here his whole life. And maybe that's what unsettled Julia today. Grant didn't stay in her orbit. He aligned himself with me instead, effortlessly, without her permission. I drain the last of my water, and my mind is sharp now and clearer than it's felt all day. Whatever history Julia and Grant share, it's more than what she's letting on. And judging by the tension I can see in her shoulders, she knows I'm aware of it. But for now, I keep my expression neutral, letting the noise of the party swirl around me as I quietly take in every glance, every awkward smile, every stiff laugh. I'm watching. I set my empty glass down carefully on the buffet table, resisting the urge to chuckle at Julia's too smooth denial to her friend. The woman has built an entire life on curated perfection, and now, for once, there's a crack she can't control. She's aware of it too. Her eyes dart toward me as she glides through her guests, smiles a little too tightly, and postures stiffly. The ease she had earlier when mocking my single status is gone, replaced by a barely concealed tension. I lean against the table, my arms crossed loosely, watching. Julia notices and, like clockwork, pivots her way toward me, leaving her circle of admirers mid-sentence without hesitation. The way she walks is deliberate and purposeful, but her smile is pure performance. She stops before me, lowering her voice so only I can hear. "You're certainly making an impression today," she says lightly, tilting her head just enough to seem casual. I keep my posture relaxed. Just being myself. "Oh?" Her eyes flash briefly, just a flicker but enough that I know I've hit a nerve. She recovers fast, of course. She always does. "I'm surprised Grant's being so attentive," she adds, drawing out the last word just enough to imply something without actually saying it. "We go way back, you know." That's rich coming from someone who denied even talking to him outside of work less than 5 minutes ago. I don't flinch, though. "Yeah, he mentioned you work together." I say, my voice deliberately calm. Sounds like it was a memorable time. Her smile tightens just slightly. "Oh, it was. We were quite close then." I lift an eyebrow. "Professional close, right? Hardly even talked outside work, wasn't that how you put it just now?" That does it. The briefest pause, a flicker of irritation behind her eyes, before she pastes the smile back on. She's good, I'll give her that. Decades of practice spinning reality to suit her narrative have made her fast, almost flawless. She leans in a fraction closer, lowering her voice further. "Look, Aaron, I know you're enjoying this moment. I get it. It must be nice, getting some attention for once." Her words are dipped in sugar, but meant to cut. Every syllable carefully chosen to needle me, to poke at whatever insecurity she assumes I'm carrying. "Attention?" I repeat with a soft laugh. "You mean the kind you've craved since we were kids? You can keep it." Her expression falters momentarily, then sharpens, her tone turning icier. "Just don't read too much into Grant's kindness. He's polite to everyone, especially people like you." "People like me." That phrase seals it, the casual, practiced superiority she's relied on since we were teenagers. The phrase always implied I'm less than in her carefully ordered world. Less polished, less successful by her standards, less worthy of admiration. I take a breath, keeping my voice even. I don't think Grant's the type to fake kindness. Julia's laugh is airy but forced. You're adorable when you're defensive. And there it is. The honest Julia, stripped of the performance just enough for me to glimpse her pettiness. The woman who's spent her entire life needing me to look smaller so she can feel bigger. Across the room, Grant and Max are seated comfortably at a table. Max explains something animatedly, while Grant listens attentively, leaning in with genuine interest. There's nothing performative about him. He's relaxed, present, unconcerned with the social games around him. Julia follows my gaze and stiffens slightly, realizing she no longer holds his focus, not in the way she assumed she did. She shifts gears almost immediately, retreating into the persona that's always served her best. Well, anyway, she says with another of her too bright smiles, her voice suddenly pitched louder so a few guests nearby can hear. It's so nice to have family here. Even if some of us don't exactly understand what it's like to build a family of our own. The comment is aimed at me, but delivered like an offhand observationa masterclass in weaponized politeness. I smile, small but steady. You're right, Julia. I say quietly. Some of us build different kinds of lives. Her expression freezes for half a beat, unsure whether I concede or deflect. She hates that ambiguity, hates not knowing if she's won whatever little power game she's playing. But I don't give her time to dissect it. I walk away calmly, moving through the crowd with a relaxed confidence I know she feels behind her back. I pass by Mom, laughing softly with one of Julia's mother-in-law's friends, but she shoots me a glance that says she heard at least part of that exchange and disapproves. No surprise there. I keep walking, my posture loose but my mind sharp. Julia's slipping. I can feel it. Grant's presence rattles her, rattled that he didn't fall neatly into whatever version of this day she had planned. The cracks in her performance are widening, and all I have to do now is watch and wait. I grab another glass of water from the drink station, my fingers curling tightly around it while I quietly scan the backyard again. Grant is near the dessert table now, listening patiently as Max precisely describes every sprinkle on his cupcake. His ease in this environment makes him stand out even more, the perfect contrast to this entire day's stiff, curated perfection. I step outside again, this time making my way to the far end of the patio where I know I won't be overheard. I can feel the pulse in my temple thudding steadily as I mentally replay Julia's snide remarks. She's confident she can keep me in my place today, but doesn't know what I know now. A shadow crosses the corner of my eye, and when I glance up, Grant walks toward me, balancing 2 cake plates. Thought you could probably use this, he says casually, holding one out to me. I take it automatically, amused despite myself. Thanks. Tactical reinforcements. His laugh is soft but real. Exactly. Oh. I tilt my head toward the garden. Max's cupcake lecture seemed intense. He chuckles again, shaking his head. That kid could brief a general on frosting. His warmth feels genuine, disarming. For a moment, I almost forgot why I asked him out here. Almost. I turn slightly to face him directly, keeping my tone light but clear. So, Julia said you two were close when she was stationed overseas. Grant's smile doesn't falter, but there's a subtle pause before he answers. We worked together, yeah. She was friendly with everyone on base. It's deliberately vague. I know that kind of answer. It's how Marines speak when they're being careful. She made it sound like you two hardly spoke. I prod gently, watching him closely. That earns me a faint smirk. That doesn't sound like Julia. His reply is diplomatic but telling. He's confirming what I already suspected without spelling it out. The careful language and slight hesitation are all there if you're listening for it. I lean against the railing, swirling the cake fork between my fingers. Were you aware she was engaged at the time? That catches him off guard. He shifts his weight slightly, exhaling slowly. Not until later, he admits, meeting my gaze steadily. She never mentioned it when we worked together. I nod, absorbing the weight of that quiet truth. He didn't betray anyone's trust, but Julia blurred lines she shouldn't have blurred. And she hid it from him, from me, from everyone. That flicker of irritation I saw in her eyes earlier? It wasn't just an annoyance that Grant showed up with me. It was fear that this part of her carefully polished past might not stay buried. Grant seems to sense my internal processing. I wasn't sure if it was my place to bring that up, he says quietly. I appreciate the honesty. It's not, I reply simply. But it explains a lot. He doesn't press me for details or ask why I'm asking. He just stands there, steady and calm, giving me space to think. I glance back toward the patio, where Julia is entertaining another group of admirers. From a distance, she's flawless again, her laugh bright and her posture perfect, but I know now that she's watching out of the corner of her eye, clocking every interaction between Grant and me. There's a power in holding this information, in knowing that Julia's narrative isn't as untouchable as she wants everyone to believe. Grant breaks the silence gently. Look, Aaron, whatever this is between you and Julia, I don't want to be caught in the middle of it. His tone isn't defensive, it's careful, respectful. I nod. You're not. You just happened to walk into the middle of it today. He exhales a soft laugh. That much is clear. Oh. Max calls for him from across the lawn, and Grant raises his hand in a wave before turning back to me briefly. If you need anything, I'm around. The offer is simple, no pressure, no strings. Just an acknowledgement that he sees more than anyone else here has bothered to see. Thanks, I say, meaning it. He heads back toward Max, and I remain where I am, finishing the last bite of cake slowly, my mind already turning over the next move. Julia's carefully managed world is so fragile underneath its shine. One well-placed question, one timeline inconsistency, and the cracks will widen. Not because I'll expose her outright, she'll do that herself. She always does when cornered. I set my empty plate on a side table, dusting a few crumbs from my uniform as I straighten again. Across the patio, Julia catches my eye briefly. Her smile is still there, but brittle, just a little too stiff. That tells me everything I need to know. I take a slow breath, steadying myself. There's nothing left to figure out. The truth is already in motion now, and Julia knows it. I adjust my cuffs, smoothing the fabric of my jacket, and step forward again into the polite hum of conversation. No one pays much attention as I return to the center of the gathering, exactly how I want it. I return to my seat with a glass of water in hand, adjusting the crease on my skirt as I sit. Not because it matters, but because it gives me a second to settle the rising energy inside me. My face is calm, my posture relaxed, but my mind is sharp now. I know what I will do, and tonight's family dinner will give me the opportunity I need. By the time dinner begins, the backyard has been transformed. Julia's perfectly curated tables set under soft string lights, flowers artfully arranged down the center of each table. It's intimate, intentional, and designed to impress. Tonight's smaller guest list includes the inner circle. Mom, Julia, and David, a few close friends, Grant and Max, and me. As I take my seat, Julia immediately assumes the role of gracious hostess, her voice syrupy sweet as she guides everyone to their chairs and orchestrates small talk. But I notice the tightness in her jaw every time Grant glances in my direction or when Max skips over to me to show me a rock he found in the garden. Mom sits beside Julia, practically glowing with pride as she remarks on how beautifully Julia has organized the day's events, praising David as the perfect supportive husband. There's no mention of me, not that I expected any. I sip my water slowly, listening as Julia leads the conversation into safe, predictable territory: nursery plans, pediatricians, stroller comparisons, but I wait patiently for my chance. When David, casually swirling his wine, asks Grant where he and Max lived before moving here, Grant answers easily. We were in California last. Before that, stationed at Pendleton for a while. Oh, they. Julia visibly stiffens at the mention of Pendleton, a slight reaction that most people would miss. But I'm watching her closely. That's right, I say lightly, setting my glass down with deliberate care. Julia mentioned she was stationed at Pendleton too, didn't she? Must have been quite a while ago. My tone is neutral, almost curious, but I know exactly where I'm going. Julia's smile freezes just a fraction. Yes, it was a short rotation during my early nursing career, she says, breezily, waving one hand as if dismissing its significance. A long time ago. David leans in slightly, genuinely curious. How long were you there? I never really heard much about that time. 3 months, maybe 4, Julia says quickly. Too quickly. I tilt my head, feigning polite curiosity. I thought you were engaged to David around then. Must have been a busy year for you. Okay. The shift in the atmosphere is subtle but unmistakable. Mom stops mid-sentence, glancing over with a flicker of confusion. David's brow furrows slightly. Julia doesn't miss a beat outwardly, but I see the faint flush creeping up her neck, the way she grips her fork just a little too tightly. Oh, no, she says smoothly. That was years later. But that's wrong. And I know she knows it. Grant, who has stayed politely quiet, glances at Julia now, his expression calm but attentive. I think you were engaged already, weren't you? I remember a photo on your desk, David, right? His tone is straightforward and innocent, but his comment slices through Julia's carefully crafted narrative. Julia hesitates just a second too long. Oh, well, she says, voice still light but her eyes sharp. You know how busy that time was. It's hard to keep track. David chuckles, not catching the undercurrent yet. You always did juggle a lot back then. Oh. But Mom is watching more closely now, her gaze flicking between Julia and me, the wheels turning slowly. I lean back slightly, offering Julia the smallest of smiles, a smile she recognizes immediately. It's the smile that says, I see you. I always have. Julia presses on, trying to redirect the conversation back to safer ground, but the tension lingers. The little inconsistencies in her story have caught David's attention now, if only faintly. And Mom's too, judging by how she keeps glancing over, processing, wondering. The rest of dinner proceeds politely on the surface discussions about pediatricians, cake flavors, gift registries, but the mood has changed beneath that. Julia knows it. I know it. I take another sip of water, keeping my posture relaxed, letting the chatter swirl around me. No need to push further, not tonight. Julia's cracks have started to show, and the people closest to her are beginning to notice. And all I have to do is sit quietly and let it happen. I push my chair back slightly, crossing one leg over the other and resting my hands calmly in my lap while I watch Julia navigate the fraying threads of her narrative. She laughs a little too loudly at a guest's comment, gesturing too broadly, trying desperately to restore the ease she thrives on. But the strain is there now, obvious if you're looking, which I am. David reaches for the salad bowl, commenting lightheartedly that Julia's work hours at the hospital were brutal back then. His tone is affectionate, teasing even, but I catch the way Julia stiffens, her fork pausing midair for just a beat before she recovers. I lean forward slightly, voice light but deliberate. It's impressive how you managed all that, Julia. Long shifts, overseas rotation, wedding planning. I don't know how you kept your timeline straight. Her smile doesn't crack immediately, but her eyes betray her, narrowing just slightly before she forces a laugh. Well, some of us are just better at multitasking, Aaron. David chuckles, still oblivious. Did you two even talk much back then? He asks Grant with genuine curiosity. I don't think I ever heard about you during that time. Grant gives a slight, easy shrug. We crossed paths here and there, he says neutrally. Julia was friendly with a lot of people. And great. That alone is enough to freeze Julia's smile for a fraction of a second again, and that fraction is all I need. Mom speaks up now, tone gentle but with a trace of curiosity she can't quite mask. Julia, dear, were you already engaged when you were doing that rotation? I thought you and David announced it just before then. Julia's knife clinks a little too loudly against her plate. It was all happening around the same time, she says quickly. Everything was a blur. You know how chaotic those years were. David pauses, wineglass halfway to his lips. I thought we got engaged after you got back from that assignment. Didn't we? The way his voice trails off is telling he's suddenly unsure. Doubt creeping in, subtle but real. Julia's tone sharpens ever so slightly. No, honey, you're mixing it up. It was definitely after. But she's speaking too fast, too firmly. The correction feels practiced rather than natural, and David seems to sense that too. He furrows his brow, leaning back in his chair as if physically distancing himself from the uncertainty she's just introduced. I don't say a word. I don't need to. The silence at the table stretches just long enough to become uncomfortable. Julia shifts in her chair, brushing an imaginary crumb from her dress, her movements suddenly stiff and defensive. Then Grant speaks again, his tone still mild but precise. I could have sworn there was a fiancé picture on your desk when you were at Pendleton. His words are a quiet bomb in the middle of Julia's dinner table. Julia's eyes flash toward him, but she recovers quickly, her laugh brittle this time. It's funny what people remember, isn't it? She says lightly, but her fingers grip the edge of her plate so tightly that her knuckles turn white. David sets his wine glass down carefully, no longer smiling. Why would there have been a picture on your desk if we weren't engaged yet? He asks, his voice quieter but edged with suspicion now. Julia forces another laugh, shaking her head. Oh, it must have been something else. Maybe a promise ring or something. But her words are falling flat now. The confidence that carried her so easily earlier today has eroded. She's defensive, cornered, and everyone can feel it. Even Mom, who has spent years smoothing over every awkward family moment, says nothing, just watches closely, her brows drawn together, lips pressed thin. Julia tries to pivot again, turning to one of her friends at the table with a forced smile. Anyway, enough about ancient history. Tell us about your kitchen renovation. But it's too late. The tension at the table is thick and undeniable. The cracks in her story have widened, and David is no longer hiding that he's unsettled. Max interrupts the awkward pause by dropping his fork with a loud clang onto his plate, startling everyone. Oops, he chirps, utterly oblivious to the adult drama around him. Grant leans forward, gently straightening Max's napkin. Still, even he can't completely hide the look of quiet observation in his eyes. He knows exactly what's happening here and how Julia is unraveling. Julia takes a steadying breath, her voice slightly higher than before as she resumes hostess mode, but it's all a performance now, and the audience has stopped buying it. I let my gaze meet hers briefly, offering nothing but a calm, unreadable expression. She knows I've seen through her facade and, worse, she knows others at this table are also starting to see through it. And yet, everything continues as if nothing happened. Polite conversation resumes, plates are passed, but that crack in the perfect exterior won't be smoothed over tonight. The damage is already done. I fold my napkin neatly beside my plate, letting the dinner chatter float around me as I quietly take it all in. Julia is still at the head of the table, smiling just a little too brightly, her shoulders just a little too stiff, still trying to steer conversation back to safe ground, baby names, nursery paint colors, stroller brands, but the tone has changed. David's polite nods have lost warmth. Mom is quieter than usual and distracted, her mind ignoring what she just witnessed. When the plates are cleared, I rise without ceremony and head toward the garden again, needing air that isn't filled with forced laughter and awkward silences. As I step outside, the cooler evening breeze is a relief. I barely reach the patio's edge before I hear footsteps behind me. It's Mom. Erin, she says softly, her voice surprisingly tentative, almost hesitant, as if unsure how welcome she is. I glance at her and nod. Mom. Oh. She hesitates again, then steps beside me, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from her blouse. For a moment, she says nothing. The silence between us feels heavier than the entire day's tension. Finally, she exhales a long breath and speaks. You really shook things up tonight. I look at her sideways. Did I? I was just asking questions. Her lips twitch, not quite a smile or annoyance, but she nods slowly. It's not like Julia to fumble her answers. Done. That acknowledgement alone surprises me enough to stay quiet. She's not defending Julia automatically, not rushing to smooth over every awkward edge like usual. She follows my gaze out to the darkening garden before speaking again. You know, we've always thought of Julia as the one who... I don't answer immediately because we both know what's unsaid. You weren't. That's been the family subtext for decades. Mom folds her arms loosely across her chest, her tone softer now. I suppose we made assumptions about you too. I lean back against the railing, not pushing but not rescuing her from awkwardness. If she's going to say it, she can say it. After another pause, she continues. When you joined the military, it didn't fit what we imagined for you. I think we didn't know how to understand that choice. And then after you came home, we didn't know how to talk about it either. About your deployments. About any of it. I nod slowly, still silent. It's rare to hear Mom speak this candidly. She's always preferred smooth surfaces and polished narratives, not a real mess. She sighs, glancing sideways at me. Julia's life has always felt easier for us to celebrate. That much is obvious. But then, quieter, she adds, that doesn't mean we weren't proud of you. I raise an eyebrow. Didn't mean you showed it either. Her head drops slightly at that. Fair, she admits. You're right. Another long pause stretches between us, and this time she doesn't rush to fill it with platitudes. You know, she finally says, her voice soft. I watched you tonight. The way you handled everything. The way you carried yourself. I saw the way Grant looked at you too, like you matter. That last part feels raw, real, almost too honest. I glance at her sharply, but she's looking straight ahead, hands clasped tightly now. It's funny, she continues. I always worried you'd end up alone because you didn't fit the mold, but I see now that you're not lonely. There's a difference. That's probably the most honest thing she's ever said to me. I speak quietly, carefully. It's not about fitting a mold, Mom. It's about respecting the life I've built. Even if it doesn't look like Julia's. She nods slowly. I see that now. 1. A bird flutters somewhere in the hedge nearby, breaking the quiet just enough that she gives a soft laugh, a real one this time, not the practiced one from inside. I suppose I've been a little stubborn, she says. That's putting it gently. I reply dryly, and we both almost laugh. Almost. She turns entirely to face me now, her expression sincere, her eyes brighter than before, but not defensive. I just want you to know that I am proud of you. I've been proud of you for a long time. Even if I didn't know how to say it. I nod again, this time more gently. That matters, Mom. And it does, even if it's late or doesn't fix all the years of feeling like an afterthought. Julia's laugh drifts faintly from the patio toward us again, but it somehow sounds brittle, empty. Mom glances toward the house and then back at me. I think maybe I should have listened better to both of you. It's not too late, I say simply. She places a hand briefly on my arm, just a quick, awkward squeeze that feels more meaningful than any elaborate apology would. Then, without another word, she turns and heads back inside, leaving me alone under the soft glow of the patio lights. I exhale slowly, letting my shoulders drop. The weight of many years suddenly feels just a little bit lighter. I step back into the house, the low hum of conversation wrapping around me again, but it feels different now, lighter, easier, even though Julia is still working overtime to maintain her perfect hostess performance. Her laugh is too bright, her movements too crisp, and I notice that a few of the guests who'd hung on her every word earlier are watching her with a little more skepticism now. Doubt, once seated, has a way of spreading. Max spots me immediately and darts over, proudly clutching a butterfly sticker he found somewhere in the party decorations. It's for you, he declares, pressing it carefully onto the sleeve of my uniform. Thank you, soldier, I tell him with a wink, and he beams, running back to Grant, chatting easily with David about something inconsequential. Even David seems distracted now, nodding along, but still processing the cracks in Julia's story from earlier. Julia catches my eye from across the room, but instead of the smug confidence she started the day with, her expression now carries an edge of wariness. She knows she can't fully control this moment anymore, and I know it too. I move deliberately toward the center of the room, picking up a glass of sparkling water as I pass a tray, and find myself next to Grant, who offers a slight nod. You okay? He asks quietly. I nod. More than okay. Max tugs on Grant's jacket, then mine. Can we go now? He asks innocently, unaware of the subtle social storm around him. Grant smiles down at him. Soon, buddy. We're almost done. I watch as Max skips away again, then glance back toward Julia, who's now standing with Mom. Mom's posture is a little stiffer, and her smile is thinner. She's starting to see Julia differently, even if she's not ready to say it aloud. More than anything, that is the revenge I didn't even have to plot. Julia exposed herself today, all on her own. I turn toward Grant. Thank you for backing me up earlier. You didn't have to say anything. His smile is small but genuine. Didn't feel right letting the timeline slide. There's warmth in his voice, but no agenda. He's simply honest, a refreshing change from what I've endured all day. We stand quietly for a moment, neither needing to fill the space with small talk, before Mom approaches, still holding a half-full glass of white wine. Aaron, she says, her tone gentler than in years. Would you mind staying a few minutes after everyone goes? I'd like to talk, properly. I nod without hesitation. Sure, Mom. She gives me a brief, awkward smile, a real one, this time, then turns back toward Julia, who has moved on to directing the cleanup efforts, her voice tight as she tries to regain command of the scene. I take another slow sip of water and let myself breathe. The truth didn't need a grand reveal, a shouting match, or a dramatic confrontation. It just needed a few quiet, well-placed questions and a willingness to let Julia's words do the work. Grant leans slightly toward me and says under his breath, "You handled all that better than most officers I served under." I chuckle softly. You haven't seen me at a staff meeting. His laugh is genuine, easy. Max calls for him again from across the room, and he excuses himself with a nod, but not before saying, "You know, if you ever want help finishing that butterfly sticker collection, Max would love a teammate." His offer is casual but lands exactly how he intends it, to simple, open, no pressure, but thoughtful. Watching him walk toward his son, I realize I feel lighter than I've felt in years. The weight of all the family expectations, judgments, comparisons, it's still there, but it's not crushing me anymore. I'm standing fully as myself, Marine veteran, unmarried, child-free, and completely fine. Better than fine. Across the room, Julia was still smiling and performing, but something essential had shifted. Her audience is smaller now, their laughter a little more forced, their questions a little more pointed. The family dynamic has changed, quietly but undeniably. No one rushed to defend her this time. No one tried to explain away the inconsistencies. And Mom, for the first time, approached me, not her. That's all the closure I need. I slip my hands into the pockets of my uniform jacket, straightening my shoulders once more. The dress blues feel lighter now, not armor, just part of who I am. I'm not the cautionary tale they wanted me to be. I'm not the pitied older sister who couldn't settle down. I'm just Aaron, independent, proud, capable, and finally at peace. I walk toward Max, crouching down as he shows me another sticker he's found, this one shaped like a star. I hold it carefully between my fingers, smiling down at him. It's a perfect detail in an imperfect day. And for once, I wouldn't change a thing. As I stand there, listening to Max explain how this sticker is the most important one, I feel an odd, peaceful clarity settle in. This entire day, with its carefully planned perfection, quiet humiliations, cracks in the facade, and subtle victories, wasn't about Julia. It was about finally standing tall in this family drama without apologizing for who I am. No one needed a dramatic confrontation. The truth was enough. Ultimately, this was my quiet revenge story. Not about tearing anyone down, but reclaiming space they never thought I deserved. The family tables may still look polished and perfect, but the power dynamic has shifted, and I didn't have to raise my voice to make that happen. So, if you've ever felt overshadowed at your family gatherings, or had your choices questioned and mocked, remember this: sometimes the best revenge is simply living your life confidently, unapologetically, and letting others reveal themselves. If you enjoy authentic, relatable revenge stories and family drama that hit close to home, subscribe now so you never miss one. We've got more coming your way, and I promise you won't want to look away.